My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 102 years old. I was born in 1922. I've lived through the Great Depression, World War II, the Cold War, the digital revolution, and a global pandemic. And I'm going to tell you something that will shock you. It took me 85 years to learn the most important thing about life. 85 years of searching, struggling, achieving, failing, trying, and missing the point completely. I wasted 8 decades chasing the wrong thing. Don't waste yours like I did. What I learned will change everything for you. But first, let me tell you how long it took me to figure it out. How many years I spent being completely, utterly, tragically wrong about what matters. Yesterday was my 102nd birthday. My great-granddaughter Sophie threw me a small party. Just family, cake, candles, the usual celebration. But as I blew out those candles, I wasn't thinking about getting older. I was thinking about time, how much I'd wasted, how much you're probably wasting right now. Sophie asked me, "Grandma Ellie, what's the secret to living so long?" Everyone always asks that question. They think longevity is about diet, exercise, genetics, luck. They're wrong. Longevity isn't about adding years to your life. It's about adding life to your years. And I spent 85 years not understanding the difference. Let me start from the beginning. I was 18 years old, fresh out of high school. The world was at war, but I was focused on my future. I had plans, big plans. I was going to be somebody, make something of myself, leave a mark on the world. I was going to matter. That was my first mistake, thinking I had to become something instead of realizing I already was something. But I didn't know that then. I was too busy planning my important life to notice I was already living it. I married Thomas in 1943. He was 22, I was 21. We were both convinced we knew what life was about. Success, achievement, building something significant, making our mark. We worked toward those goals for decades. Thomas became a successful lawyer. I became a teacher, then a principal, then superintendent of schools. We had 3 children, Robert, Catherine, and Michael. We were climbing the ladder, achieving our dreams, becoming somebody, and missing everything. Robert was 20, Catherine was 18, Michael was 15. Robert came home from college for Christmas break. I was so busy preparing for the district's annual review that I barely talked to him. He tried to tell me about his studies, his girlfriend, his concerns about the Vietnam War. "That's nice, dear," I'd say, shuffling through papers. "We'll talk more later." Later never came. Robert went back to school. I went back to work. I was achieving great things, managing 15 schools, implementing innovative programs, getting recognition from the state education department. But I was missing my son, my real job, my most important work. That pattern continued for years, decades. Success was always more urgent than family. Achievement was always more pressing than relationship. Building my career was always more important than building memories. Thomas made partner at his firm. I became superintendent. We bought a bigger house, newer cars, expensive furniture. We were successful. Finally, we'd made it. Catherine got married that year, small ceremony. We were both too busy with work to help much with planning. Michael graduated high school, top of his class. We attended graduation but left early for a work function. We were achieving everything we'd planned and missing everything that mattered. But I didn't see it then. I was too focused on the next goal, the next achievement, the next rung of the ladder. I was 63, near retirement, finally successful by every measure I'd been using. Awards on my wall, money in the bank, respect from colleagues, recognition from the community, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed for. But something felt wrong, empty, incomplete. Robert lived across the country. We talked maybe once a month, polite conversations about work and weather. Catherine had 2 children I barely knew. We saw them at Christmas and birthdays, awkward visits filled with small talk. Michael was struggling with his career, with relationships, with life. But I didn't know how to help because I didn't really know him. I'd spent 40 years building a successful career and accidentally built walls between me and my children. But I still didn't understand what I'd done wrong. I thought the problem was that I needed new goals, new achievements, new ways to matter. I was 68, retired, finally had time to focus on what really mattered. Except I didn't know what really mattered. I volunteered at the hospital, joined charity boards, travelled with Thomas to places we'd always planned to visit. I was busy, active, engaged, but still empty. Thomas and I would sit at breakfast, reading separate newspapers, living separate internal lives despite 47 years of marriage. We'd achieved everything we'd planned, but somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being companions and become colleagues in the business of running a life. Thomas had his first heart attack. Suddenly, mortality wasn't theoretical anymore. I spent weeks at the hospital, worried, scared, praying. During those long nights in the ICU waiting room, I started thinking about time differently, not about how to fill it with achievements, but about what it actually contained. All those hours I'd spent in meetings instead of with my children. All those evenings I'd worked late instead of talking to Thomas. All those weekends I'd spent on school business instead of family business. I'd been so busy managing time that I'd forgotten to experience it. Thomas recovered. We had 15 more years together. But something had shifted in me. A crack in my lifelong certainty about what mattered. I was 78. Robert called with news. His daughter Emma, my granddaughter, was getting married. "Will you come to the wedding, Mum? It would mean a lot to Emma." Of course I'd come. But as I hung up, I realized something terrible. I barely knew Emma, my own granddaughter, a stranger with my DNA. I'd been so focused on being important to the world that I'd become unimportant to my own family. At the wedding, I watched Emma dance with her father. Robert's face was radiant with love and pride. I envied him, not because he was younger, but because he knew his daughter, really knew her. He'd learned something I'd missed. He'd figured out what actually mattered. That night in my hotel room, I started adding up the cost of my successful life. 3 children I'd raised but never really known. A husband I'd loved but never fully connected with. Decades of achievements that felt suddenly meaningless. I'd won the career game and lost the life game, but I still didn't understand what the lesson was. I was getting warmer, but not there yet. Catherine called. Her husband had died. Cancer, sudden and devastating. I flew to be with her, to help with arrangements, to offer support. For 2 weeks, I stayed with Catherine and her children. No agenda, no schedule, no achievements to pursue, just presence, just being there. And something extraordinary happened. We talked, really talked, for the first time since she was a child. Catherine told me about her marriage, her fears about raising children alone, her grief, her hopes. I listened, not to solve or fix or achieve anything, just to listen. "Mom," she said one evening, "I wish we'd done this more when I was growing up." "Done what?" "Just talked, just been together, without you having to be somewhere else or do something important." That's when the crack in my certainty became a break. I'd thought being important meant doing important things. But to Catherine, being important meant being present. I'd spent 60 years trying to matter to the world while failing to matter to the people who mattered most. But I still wasn't quite there, still didn't fully understand. Thomas died, peacefully, at home, with me holding his hand. 67 years of marriage, over. As I sat with his body before the funeral home came, I thought about our life together. We'd built a good life by external measures, financial security, social standing, accomplished children, comfortable retirement. But had we built a good relationship? Had we really known each other? Had we enjoyed each other? Had we been present for each other? I realized we'd spent decades as partners in achieving goals, but had forgotten to be companions in experiencing life. We'd lived together but hadn't really shared a life. After the funeral, the house felt enormous and empty, not because Thomas was gone, though I missed him terribly, but because I was alone with 88 years of accumulated achievements that suddenly felt meaningless, awards and recognition and success that couldn't fill the emptiness or provide comfort or give meaning to the remaining years. I'd spent my entire life building a resume instead of building a life. I was 93, living alone but not lonely, thanks to wonderful neighbours and weekly visits from family. Michael, my youngest, had become my most frequent visitor. He'd struggled in his career, but had found happiness in simpler things. A job he enjoyed, rather than one that impressed others. A small house he loved, rather than a large one he could afford. Friends who knew him well, rather than contacts who could help him professionally. He'd learned what I was still learning, that success and happiness aren't the same thing. "Mum," he said during one visit, "you seem different lately, more relaxed, more present." He was right. I was different. I'd stopped trying to be important and started trying to be present. Instead of reading the newspaper during breakfast, I watched the birds at my feeder. Instead of scheduling every moment of every day, I left time for spontaneous conversations with neighbours. Instead of focusing on what I'd accomplished, I focused on what I was experiencing. Right now, today, this moment, it was a revelation, at 93, but I still hadn't learned the deepest lesson. The pandemic. I was 98, isolated but not alone, thanks to technology my great-grandchildren taught me to use. Video calls with family, online services from my church, virtual visits from friends. But mostly, I was alone with my thoughts, my memories, my regrets, and my growing understanding. For the first time in my adult life, I had no goals to pursue, no achievements to chase, no ladder to climb. Just time, pure, unscheduled, unplanned time. And in that time, something extraordinary happened. I started noticing things I'd been too busy to see for 8 decades. The way morning light moved across my kitchen wall, the sound of children playing in the street, the taste of tea when I wasn't drinking it while doing something else, the feeling of gratitude for simple things, a warm bed, a phone call from family, the ability to read a book. I was experiencing life instead of managing it, and that's when it hit me. At 98 years old, the thing I should have learned at 18. Life isn't about the big moments, it's about the small ones. It's not about the achievements, it's about the experiences. It's not about what you accomplish, it's about how you pay attention. I'd spent 85 years looking for the meaning of life in all the wrong places, in success, in recognition, in achievement, in building something important. But the meaning was never in the building, it was in the being. The meaning was in the morning cup of coffee I'd drunk while rushing to work for 40 years. The meaning was in the bedtime stories I'd rushed through to get to more important tasks. The meaning was in the conversations I'd cut short to answer more important calls. The meaning was in the ordinary moments I'd treated as interruptions to my important life. But those ordinary moments were my important life. I'd been so busy living for the future that I'd missed the present, so busy building a life that I'd forgotten to live it, so busy becoming somebody that I'd missed being somebody. The thing I learned at 98 that took me 85 years to understand is devastatingly simple. Life is not a destination, it's a journey. And the journey is made of moments, small moments, ordinary moments, right now moments. The moment when your child asks you to look at something they've drawn. The moment when your partner reaches for your hand while you're watching television. The moment when you notice how the sunset looks through your kitchen window. The moment when you realize you're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, with exactly who you need to be with. Right now. These moments are always available, but only if you're present for them. I miss thousands of these moments because I was too busy preparing for future moments that I thought would be more important. But there are no more important moments. There are only the moments you pay attention to and the moments you miss. I spent 85 years missing moments while waiting for the important ones to arrive. The important ones were arriving constantly. I just wasn't present to receive them. That's what I learned. That's what took me 85 years. Presence is everything. Attention is everything. Right now is everything. Everything else is just details. Last week, Sophie, my great-granddaughter, was visiting. She's 7 years old. She was showing me a drawing she'd made, a house with a garden and a big sun and stick figures of our family. In the old days, I would have glanced at it while thinking about something else. "That's lovely, dear," I would have said, already moving on to the next task. But I've learned, finally, at 102. So I put down everything else. I looked at Sophie's drawing with complete attention. I asked her about every detail. I listened to every explanation. We spent 20 minutes completely absorbed in that drawing. It was one of the best 20 minutes of my 102 years. Not because the drawing was particularly exceptional, but because I was completely present for it. Because I finally learned what took me 85 years to understand. The most important moment is always the one you're in. The most important person is always the one you're with. The most important thing is always what's happening right now. I can't get back the 85 years I spent looking for life in all the wrong places. But you can learn from my mistake. You can stop wasting your years like I wasted mine. You can be present for your life while you're living it. The meaning you're looking for isn't in the future. It's right here, right now, in this moment, in this breath, in this heartbeat. Pay attention. That's the secret. That's what took me 85 years to learn. Don't let it take you that long.